Greetings, fellow time travelers, and everyone still stuck on Earth. This is another LinuxCollections.com how-to video for your education, information, and entertainment. Let's get rolling. This is part 2 of the Ubuntu 10.10 backup server. The first part ran through the basic install and the screens and steps required to get the server up and running. Now that we have the server up and running, we're set to configure the Samba server and configuration files and the steps necessary to make it available to our Windows-based network. So let's get started. It tells you right at the very bottom that you can run a command as administrator, meaning the root user, by using sudo, and that is a command basically for super user do, and then you can pass in the command. So indeed, if you type in sudo su, which says as a super user type the command super user or su, it will then ask the password for your admin type user, which is user, and boom, we now have a root prompt in our Ubuntu backup server. So now we have to configure it, and there's a few pieces of the puzzle. You will want to reference our how-to doc that has, again, this will be labeled Ubuntu 10.10 Samba server, my backup server information to show you a couple of the configuration options that we're going to walk through now. So as root, here we are in our root location. We actually type cd enter, and that will take you to your home location. And as the super user root that we used with our sudo su command, we are now in the root location, and we actually type command nano space create underscore backups.sh, and that will create a file called create underscore backups.sh, which you can see at the top of the screen. In Nano, we can then enter the text and save it off with the Control X and save yes. Now let's walk through the script that we wrote here. It starts off with the pound exclamation point, or sometimes called the sharp bang if you're of the English persuasion, and it got shortened in terms of the Linux Unix world to shebang, and that is actually the opening part of the text file, which is used as a signature to indicate to the shell that this is actually a shell script. Indeed, then the next part is which shell you want to process this, and sometimes you might see just /bin/sh. In our case, we put the /bash, which is the born-again shell, which is typically a Linux shell that you get when you run a Linux system. So now we're going to walk through a set of commands. So let's walk through what's going on. We start with the cd /, which takes us to the root file system. Now this is typically only available to the root user, and this is really done as a root user to just do a way to make a backups location where we're going to control the permissions and allow that to be our backup location on this backups server. So from that, after we are on the root location, we do a makedir command, or mkdir space backups, and then we do a cd into that. So now we are at backups location, and here we didn't add any other subfolders, if you will, to the backups location. We just commented that you can add other subdirectories here by just simply making other folders. As an example, the makedir accounting, or makedir my backups, or what have you. So we are not doing that in this case, but we've left that in the script in case you want to. Then we change directory back to our root location, cd /, and then we need to change permissions on that new backups folder. Now obviously some security-minded people will freak out at the following commands, because we're basically opening it up to all users, all groups, and that's what the 777 is. We're not going to delve into the change mode command that you see here, the chmod -r. That is recursive, or go into subfolders, but we're basically making that 777 is not your lucky number. It is a permission mask that lets everybody get at everything in that folder. Again, security is not an issue in this case. You may want to do something different. We're going to change the group to some no group. So basically this command reads as change group recursively to the no group if you like that, on the backups folder. And then we change the owner to nobody, same way. So the chown or change owner recursively -R to nobody for the backups folder. So we've basically made this folder not owned by anybody, not owned by a group, and have permissions for everybody and everything. And then we change back to our root location, which is where this script began. So after we Control X and save that, as you saw towards the bottom it says wrote 12 lines, it actually saved our file. We're going to make that executable, and that's the change mode command here. So chmod space a+x, and that says add for all, meaning owner, group, and others, +x, which is executable status on the create_backups.sh command. Now when we type, here you see /create_backups.sh, and in the Linux world that / is another security issue, so that you can't have scripts or other malicious type software run that are pathed in, essentially available on other parts of the system. By using the /, you're saying in this directory that I'm in, run create_backups.sh, which is the file that we just created and is the only thing that we want to run. So it's again a security approach that the shell imposes on us, and that's what that's all about. But that's a good habit for running things as root in Linux, is to always be specific. Run what you want to run. And so we've created our backups folder. Now we can get into the smb.configuration file, and you can look at the top. We're back to nano. We actually typed nano space /etc for etc /samba, which is the folder for the Samba configuration, and then /smb.conf. This is a fairly large file with a lot of stuff in it. It's also fairly well commented. What we have added is the backups section, and so you can see that right in the middle of our screen. We actually typed all this in the smb.conf file, the Samba configuration file, and this gives us notes on the backups folder that is going to be a shared folder that the Samba server will serve up to the outside world. And this is what makes this folder that we just created available to computers, or essentially Windows computers, outside of our little server. So we added a comment that says my backups backup file server, to inherit ACLSs, which is the access control lists. We say yes, and that's a way for permissions to propagate into this folder. We specify the path. That's a critical aspect. We need to specify where it is. We say that read-only is no, public is yes, that's also important, browsable is yes, and then the directory mask. Again, security is not a concern here. Most network administrators would cringe at this, but we want this easy to use. This is a private server, not on the internet, not accessible to anyone thing but us. So we feel safe making it as basically just a accessible hard drive via the network that we're using. And so we add that in there, we Control X save, and we need to make one more change. So now we actually have gone in and we actually didn't have to make this change. This is the default on the Ubuntu server, but I wanted to show it to everybody. So when you open the smb.conf file, as you see at the very top, and scroll down to the global section, you will see the workgroup equals workgroup, which is what we named our the domain or the workgroup for our little Ubuntu My Backup server. And we want to verify and show you that that is an important aspect to this, because that is where it will be visible to typical Windows install. So again, that's the default, but I did want to point that out, because if you do not have a matching network name, you will run into troubles on a Windows side. So now you can see the very bottom of the screen, we are changing directory to our backups folder, and we're going to type hello text. So we type nano space hello.txt. You can see this file here. We just typed hello from my backups workgroup Samba file server, and this is the file hello text in backups folder. So we save that, and now we actually have file in our Ubuntu server. Finally, this last screen shows us just a couple of notes. The backups location is where we're at. We typed cat hello text, or that's cat for catalog, which is the Linux command for type or show the file. So cat space hello.txt, and you'll see our text from our text file. And then we type service space smbd space restart. Now what this tells the system is that we want to restart the smbd service, which is the Samba daemon, or the service that is running the Samba server for the outside world to access things. And because we made changes to the configuration, we do want to restart the service. So that's a simple command to do that. Basically, we're telling the system to restart the Samba service, and that's exactly what happens. And you'll see it says it starts, it's running, and then it's got a new process ID. We are now ready to see what the outside world looks at with our little server. Now we jump to a Windows 7 box, and we are now our server's up and running. We are able to look at that server. Again, this is Windows 7, so we go to Explorer, we go to Network. This has many different servers on our local network here, but you can now see the My Backup server, and when you drill into that, you will see the backups shared folder, and as we drill into that, boom, we see our hello.txt file. We can then actually open that, and you'll note here that in Notepad the line feed is lost because we're using the Linux style or Unix style of line feeds, which is just a simple line feed character and not the carriage return line feed that Notepad would expect for a MS-DOS or Windows-based text file. But the file's there, we've seen it, and we are good. Then, just for fun, I hopped over to a Windows 10 box to show everyone that everything is pretty much the same and functional on the latest Microsoft operating system, and you can see that the My Backup server is visible and available in the network section of our Windows 10 Explorer. And as we go into it, we see the same thing we saw in Windows 7, that there is the backups folder and the hello text file, and when we open it, we see the same thing in Notepad, that this is the file that we created. We can, of course, save things to this backup folder, copy things from Windows to this backup folder, move things back and forth through the network. We have a functional Ubuntu 10.10 Samba server with a backups folder with open security, so anyone on the Windows network can access the files on that. So it creates essentially a network drive that we can use anywhere on our network. So this ends our second part of our Ubuntu backups server process. We walked through the Samba configuration and how to restart the Samba service and get it going, and then we showed you on our Windows 7 and Windows 10 boxes the ability to get at that folder on the network on our backup server from our old Dell system that we installed Ubuntu onto and configured the way we wanted it. So thank you for joining us on this two-part journey. We appreciate your interest with our server install, our Samba file configuration, and this is LinuxCollections.com signing off.